Thanks. Well, good morning. I'm kind of an energy guy, so we could just try that one more time. I know it's early, but good morning. Good morning. All right. Hey, I'm excited to talk to you about really something that I've been exploring for the last 5 years, and that's this concept of how to have wonder in our day and how to have wonder in our work. And I want to share with you a story I've been working on for about 12 years. And really, it's around this concept of design for good. But the reason I'm on the stage is really because I'm a dad. That's my wolf pack, and they're the best. In fact, I wanted to share with you my Claw son, that's his favorite photo. But no, I show you this because about 12 years ago when my wife and I started having this family is also when I started my design firm, which is a whole other talk, by the way, if you should start your design firm when you have your firstborn. And I wanted to do work like most of us, right? We wanted to do work that we're happy about and that that challenges us and makes a difference. But I also wanted to do work that was more than that, than just paying the mortgage. Even though that's important, I wanted to be doing the kind of work that made the world a better place. As maybe trite and cheesy as that sounds, I really want to do that. You know, but there's a problem doing that sometimes, and that is. And I'd love to ask you this question. How many of you here throughout the year feel that your work is kind of average? Yeah, we always have that feeling, right? Well, not always, but we often have that feeling. If you always have that feeling, maybe we should be talking about something different. But, you know, for me, it was, this talk isn't about a cure for averageness, but it's really about how to prepare to see the day and how to prepare to see your work. For example, we all came to Gain because we want to be inspired, right? And we want to see other people doing things that would really push us and challenge us. And I think that's wonderful, and I think we need to have that. But I think if we don't look at our work to the point where it can actually make a difference, then we're missing out on something really spectacular. So I will admit in advance that I am a data point type of guy. I love collecting facts and quotes that inspire me and challenge me. And I know we talked about this number yesterday, but there's 7 billion people in the world. I don't even know what that number means. I mean, I read that and my mind goes, that's a lot. And so I do what probably most of us would do is I try to visualize that. And even though this isn't 7 billion, that's a lot. And even though 7 billion's a huge number, the number that really is intriguing to me is this one. How can one profession, how can one design firm, or even more fascinating to me is how can one designer be changing this world? And that's something that that fascinates me and that I'm constantly trying to figure out. And I want to share with you a moment of wonder that I had at Rule 29 and how it's changed the way I see. And hopefully this will give you something to think about. But before I do that, I want to share with you a story. And this is my grandpa Will. And he was my knight in shining armor. My parents had me when I was young, and they didn't stay together. And so he was my father figure. He was my guy, right? And so I couldn't wait to hang out with him. I lived across the country in Arizona. He lived in Illinois. And every summer I'd come back, and we'd be able to hang out. And this one particular summer, I was 9. I'll never forget this. I found out I was going to be able to go camping with him, just he and I, for a whole week. And I was pumped. You know, we did what you would do. You know, you go hiking and fishing and throw rocks. And at the end of the week, we did something that we usually did as a family, and that was go get ice cream. If you can't tell, I love ice cream. And so I was very excited about this. And as the day went on, it started to rain. And the reason this was an issue is typically we didn't go to town when it rained. We kind of closed up camp and made sure everything stayed dry. But he saw that I was bummed out, I think, and he goes, let's go. We're going to go no matter what. And so town was about 20 or 30 minutes away, and so we got in the car and we headed to town to get some ice cream. And as we went, every mile the rain got harder and harder. And I'll be honest with you, I was scared of storms back then. And this was a classic Midwest summer storm. I mean, you could hear the drops on the car, right? So on the way back, it was even going harder. And I was kind of freaked out, and I think I had my eyes closed. And I remember the car coming over the side of the road. And I looked at my grandpa, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'll be right back. And so he got out of the car and he walked, and I was looking through the windshield wipers, right? Like every other pass, and I could see him kneeling down in this downpour with another couple changing a tire. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Because up to that point, when I'd see people on the side of the road, I was like, oh, you poor bastards. I hope it works out for you. I didn't know you could do that. And so he came back, and I looked at him, and I was like, wow, that was awesome. And he goes, let's go back and get warm. Gandhi puts it this way: be the change you wish to see in the world. And I know we see this quote probably a lot, but it's so beautifully true. And when I go around and I talk about some of the work we do in Africa and the work we do with veterans, people say to me, how can I get involved? What should I do? Is there a formula for this? And really, for me, it's two simple things. One, what are you passionate about? Or what pisses you off about the world that you want to change, that you want to be a part of? Figure that out and research it. Two is respond to something right in front of you. If you're passionate about those things, look around in ways to get involved. I know that sounds overly simple, but that's truly the way. For me, one of the things that I just couldn't understand was extreme poverty. I couldn't put my mind around it, and I also started coming up with these crazy ideas that I needed to go to Africa. I don't know why, I just thought that maybe that would be one place to find out. And so I was telling one of my friends about it, and he goes, you know what? You're never going to believe this. My son just interviewed for a job, and he became a director of an organization called Life in Abundance. And they work in sub-Saharan Africa and some of the poorest of the poor areas. And we have a Give initiative at Rule 29, and that is we're trying to give a percentage of our work to companies that change the human condition. And that work varies. And I really wanted them to be one of our first partners. And I said, hey, can you tell me more about what you do? And he's like, yeah, we work in some of these countries in Africa. So it's Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, which is my favorite, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And I was like, oh, man, I'd love to be a part of that. How can we help you? And he's like, well, we need someone to redo our strategy and help us with fundraising and telling our story and our brand. And he goes, and we want you to do that because we think you're pretty good at that, but you need to go. I was like, what? He's like, you have to go. You need to go see the work to understand. And I'll be honest with you, you saw I was a dad of 4. I still am, actually. And I have a company, and I couldn't imagine 2 weeks in Africa. But luckily, my wife and I worked it out, and we were like, let's do this. I asked him if I could take one of my good friends with me who's a photographer, and off we went. And I don't know if you read statistics as much as I do, but they started sending me these things that really kind of intimidated me. 3 out of every 4 people in Nairobi live in a slum dwelling. That's millions of people. Sorry, my clicker is, there we go. And then 1 in 10 South Sudanese children will die before their 5th birthday. As a dad, I can't even fathom that, where it's only 10 in 1,000 in the U.S. And so I'm internalizing these things, and I think I understand them, right? But it's kind of like the 7 billion number to me. And then the last one they gave me, I'll never forget this. He's like, oh yeah, there's one more you need to read. This is the first country we're going to. There are approximately 50,000 children living in the streets of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And I'll be honest with you, I was pretty concerned. I was like, what do I do as a designer to internalize this and understand this and do something different? But I said, well, I'm going to go see, and maybe you can come up with an idea. So we went. The first year we went to Ethiopia and Kenya. And I don't know how many of you here have been in a developing world's slum scenario, but it is a multi-sensory experience. There's obviously the visual part, and you can imagine probably the smell of the slum. But for me, it was just its ever-presence. Everywhere you looked, there was just challenges that I was having a hard time reconcile. And near the end of my trip, I was really starting to get overwhelmed. I didn't know what impact I could make, and I was, quite honestly, having a hard time with it. And then I saw this little girl. My last day, I went to an eye clinic, and I saw she was given her first pair of eyeglasses to wear the very first time in her little beautiful life. She saw the world clearly. And I just totally started bawling. I was like, that is awesome. I want to help organizations that do that kind of work. And I remember I got on the plane, I was going home, I was so excited, and I had all these ideas of, the change that we're going to help and the difference we're going to make. And I started having a hard time. I started feeling average again. I started feeling that the problems are so big and so complex. How do I really help them? And so on this one particular day, Brian, my photographer buddy, came and said, hey, I want you to watch this. I know you're kind of struggling a little bit, but maybe this will help you. These are the kids that we interviewed in Ethiopia that their local community view as just hopeless, almost to the level of trash. And so I watched it. So I watched that like 3 times and was just totally bawling because it wasn't until that moment that I saw what we did completely differently. I saw these kids that I was able to meet as people, not a statistic. And I think so often when we do this kind of work, we look at these facts and we forget that there's a human element behind it. And we have an amazing opportunity and responsibility, in my opinion, as designers to be faithful to them, to tell the best story possible, and to take this work and really make it something worthy of the needs out there. And I think that, for me, that moment of wonder was everything. This was about 5 years ago, and after literally watching that film, I thought to myself, I need to redo and relook at how our design process works. I think too often, at least at Rule 29, we looked at these statistics and these things and we saw them as that. And we forgot about the human element and what we needed to be responsible for in our work. And I found this quote, and it's a Hemingway quote, and he calls it the best people, but I almost think it's the best way to look at creative, and that is, as designers, we have a feeling for beauty. We understand how to take risks, the discipline to tell the truth, and the capacity for sacrifice. Those things were something that I really wanted to have in my day-to-day. It's something I wanted to have in the work that I did. And I was desperately trying to figure out how to do that. And I was trying to understand why I was so excited about it. And I realized it's because this is who I authentically am. This is how I'm made. I think we're all made. I mean, think about it. We are completely weird, nerdy creatures, right? I mean, we get excited about fonts and colors, and we see things in story, and we get mad at bad menu design. I mean, we're crazy, right? But we also have this unique ability to tell incredible stories and to make impact. And I think that if we don't build moments of wonder or moments of doing this type of design for good, social value work, then we're missing out on a whole dimension of our career. And for me, I think when you understand what motivates you, and you're truly authentic with those motivations, then you're able to experience this more and more and more. I wanted to pause really quick and say that you don't have to go to Africa to do these things. I know yesterday Denise Korn talked about youth design. There are organizations all over the country that we can be a part of, and AIJ is helping make all of us aware of those. But there's also organizations like Epic Design. Epic's out of Chicago, and they're starting to create chapters around the country, and they take designers from different organizations and come together for 8 weeks and work for a nonprofit to do something amazing for them. So since that moment, I've been back to Africa 3 more times. And as I'm trying to figure out more and more how to do this kind of work at Rule 29, we're realizing that we can't do all of it ourselves. And so there are 2 ways we're currently collaborating to do these types of projects consistently. So this June I went to South Sudan, which is our world's newest country. It was finally relatively safe enough for us to go. And then I was also supposed to go to Kenya. And these are some of the scenes from South Sudan. And I show you this only because it is such a different scenario than being in an urban slum. It's a country that needs so much help. And in fact, Life in Abundance came to us and said, hey, we would like you to help us with some education pieces. So many people in the area don't know how to take care of themselves from a health standpoint, or they don't understand the need for malaria medicine and the importance of mosquito nets. So I went to my friend at Kent State University and I said, hey, listen, we have a lot of this work to do. Do you have anyone that can help us? And he's like, well, what about our graduate program? And then it dawned on me, why don't we as creatives work with universities more and more across the country? And so I was like, well, would you be willing to help us with this? And he's like, absolutely. So the Kent State graduate program joined us, and for the last 6 months starting last January, we worked on different infographics that I could take when I went to Sudan and test in the field. And that was incredibly inspiring. Here are just some of the samples. I don't actually have any of the artifacts. I left them there, and we're still getting data back from them. But I was able to test these with local doctors and also go into people's homes and talk to them about what are some of the ways they understand information and how some of the ways they want to be communicated to. And it was incredibly inspiring. I mean, it was almost like I got to go back to college and be a design student again. And what I think was really refreshing for my team is that we wanted to do this work, but we didn't have time to do this work because this particular job was unfunded. And so we were able to collaborate with the local university and do this work together. And it was really incredible. In fact, we got done a lot earlier than I thought, and we were also able to add an element for kids. And so we were able to go to a school in Rumbek, Sudan, and watch the kids go through some of our worksheets to see if it made sense to them about malaria prevention and mosquito nets. We also started working with Life in Abundance on a microfinance program. And for those of you that aren't familiar with microfinance, I'm sure most of you are, but basically Life in Abundance gives a loan to some local entrepreneurs. They start a business, we get them trained, and they're empowered to run their business and slowly pay back the loan, and that money goes into another business, and it kind of keeps going. This one particular project we were really excited about because we wanted to help local girls, women, in the Kibera slum who are HIV positive or are widows learn how to make shoes. And this was important because they didn't have shoes, but they also could barter these shoes locally. And we were really hoping that this would be something that would be able to develop and expand. And the first couple pairs of shoes we had weren't really wearable because they'd never made shoes before, nor had we. And so I sat down with actually one of my designers who went to fashion school, and we made these prototypes and templates and started designing flip-flops. I'd never done that before, and we just thought we had to try something, and it was incredible to work back and forth across the ocean and through email and really bad English, and us trying to figure out Swahili on how to build these shoes. And here are some of the women that work on Kanjo. And what's incredible is we started this project 2 years ago, and I thought it would be up and running because that's what we do in the West, like in 3 months. That's not the case. In fact, about 4 months ago, I got this package in the mail, and I was super excited about it. I was like, oh, wow. We found some local people that had some shoe experience, and we hired them to help train and translate. And we got these pair of shoes, and I was like, oh, look at these. These are great. So I talked to Life in Abundance. I'm like, what are these shoes? And they're like, well, these are the ones that the girls made. I'm like, you mean the trainer? He's like, no, the girls. After they got your direction and they did some prototyping, they figured it out. And to say that we were beyond excited is an understatement. So if you go to Conjo.is, you can sign up for when these shoes are available. We're making 8 pairs a week. And out of those 8 pairs, we're going to sell some in the States to try to make some money to keep this program going and hopefully extend it to other countries. And I just found out the other day that the site is actually going to launch because the shoes got through customs. And so, to be honest, it's actually going to be live in 2 weeks, fingers crossed. So we're really excited about that. So those are just 2 ways that we're continuing to try to make a difference in our day-to-day. And I think that one of the phrases that I say around my team all the time, and it kind of drives them crazy, but I want to share it with you because it really is, I think, a great definition of what this conference means to me. And that is, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. These types of projects are all around us. And I know we're going to see things. When you go to a conference like this, sometimes you get super overwhelmed, right? Because some of these projects are so big, you're like, how am I going to apply these to my firm? And I think part of the answer is just seeing what's in front of you and being involved in something that you're passionate about. I'll end with my grandpa. The day after the flat tire incident, my mom picked me up. And she's like, how was your week with Grandpa? I'm like, it was amazing. And she said to me, hey, the reason why you spent this week with Grandpa is because he's starting something called chemotherapy. And of course, I didn't know what that was as a kid. And unfortunately, about 9 months from then, my grandpa was gone, and we were never able to, relive our camping experience. And the reason I'm sharing that story with you is because I go back to that moment, and I think to myself, did my grandpa pull over that day on the side of the road because he thought maybe this was the last time we're going to have together to teach me a lesson? Or did he pull over that day on the side of the road because he saw an opportunity and he wanted to make a difference? I hope I am more the second, and hope we as a community are as well. Thank you.